What's up everybody, how's it going? It's Berk, aka Dansgwait here, and welcome back to more from the most interesting playthrough of Final Fantasy X I have done in quite some time. Yes indeed, I am back with more from the auto battle / attack only challenge. At the end of the last session, we made it through Unalesca in kind of surprisingly easy fashion for some. I know there's plenty of people that would have also known that it was likely to be a bit easier than people would have expected, but I'm pretty sure a few people were quite surprised by how easily I managed to get through Unalesca. And at this stage, since I'm heading towards the end of the game and Braska's find Leon, who is a different kind of ball game compared to everybody else so far, it is kind of, I've taken the limiters off here and I've really started to push my levels when necessary in order to get the job done. So we made it inside Sin and through the Sea of Sorrow, and now there is only one major storyline boss standing in our way before we can get to Braska's Final Aeon and try to complete the story of this game by pretty much using auto battle only for a huge majority of the run. So that's what we're going to be looking at in this session. Going to be taking on Seymour Omnis, hopefully getting through him, and then getting to Braska's Final Aeon to try and complete the challenge. So as always, thank you to everybody that's been supporting the series so far. It continues to be a great success, so please remember to show the video some love if you are continuing to have fun with this content, and it will continue to be my pleasure to bring you guys more stuff like this in the future. So let's get into it and talk about the next boss battle in the run. Now, there's two things that I remember from my battles against Seymour Omnis, and obviously they're pretty simple. The first is that he does have powerful elemental spells, and elements are something that I don't have like a huge amount of protection for, especially in terms of variety. Now, I wasn't really sure also what the characters were going to be targeting. Are they going to target the multiphasm things around him? Are they going to target Seymour directly? If so, then the elements that he's hitting us with are only going to change quite rarely in the battle. So all of that stuff was kind of unclear to me, and that's why I kind of didn't waste too much time here. I just wanted to get on with the battle and see what was going to happen to those multiphasm things that are around him, because they are, of course, going to influence the battle quite significantly. So is auto battle possible? And if it is possible, what are the characters going to be targeting as a priority? So the elements were the first thing, and the multiphasms, and the second thing is, of course, he delivers a really powerful ultimate that could potentially wipe out my party. So those are the things I needed to see, like was ultimate powerful enough to give me a game over, and what was going to happen with the auto battle itself, and would it be possible. The characters were generally looking very strong. I had them pretty much ready to at least give Braska's Final Aeon a shot. I mean, for pretty much everything else, they were pretty OP at this stage. So I was feeling fairly confident in terms of stats, but there could be some kind of niche moves in between that could kind of leave me unstuck. So in preparation, I decided to give Kimahri elemental protection here. The red armlet that I got all the way at the start of the game is still proving potentially useful at this stage. I did have an SOS shell, but I thought at first, let me try to just cover the bases with the elements because it's a pretty unique armor. I decided to just keep Wakka's armor because it had the auto phoenix and the auto potion, of course, that could still be useful. And for Tidus, he does have an SOS reflect, so I figured it might be interesting to leave him with that particular armor as well. And with that, I decided to dive in and give Seymour Omnis a go and see what would happen. Now, I have to say, this has always been one of my favorite backdrops for a boss battle pretty much ever. I think this looks super, super cool. So let's get into it and see how we did against Seymour Omnis and whether we could power through him with our pretty beefy trio of characters. Immediately, the first thing you'll notice is that auto battle is indeed disabled for this battle, unfortunately. But maybe it's for the best, because there's so many things to target that it might have got really messy if auto battle was enabled here. So we will just be doing attack only, and by default you target Seymour Omnis' body anyway. So in that sense, it's an attack only battle. So Tidus with the first move comes in and does 5,400 damage on a critical. So Kimahri then comes in with 1,800, and then Wakka only 1,800 too. So let me stop things here because that's quite an important thing to note. Basically, I've been talking about piercing weapons a lot, and in general, you've seen that when you do have the piercing weapons, you slice through difficult enemies. Now, piercing really shines when an enemy has a relatively low defense stat, but they have the special armored status that the piercing can negate. Because when you take away the armored status, all that's left is their raw defense stat, and if that's low, then you do really big damage. Now, when you have an enemy that has a high defensive stat, and also has the armored status too, then it can be the case that celestial weapons can work better, because as I've mentioned, celestial weapons can bring the defense down to 0. So it won't negate the armored status, but it will treat their defense stat as if it's 0. So in this particular case, one of the most interesting things about Seymour Omnis is that his defense stat is 180. So that's the reason why, even though we have piercing weapons and we have pretty high strength, just by the virtue of him having 180 defense, we're still not actually doing a lot of damage. So I thought that was important to note here. If you're wondering why they're struggling so much, it's not because piercing's not working or anything like that, it's because Seymour Omnis just has a very high defense stat. So let's continue the battle and see this first flurry of fire augers from Seymour. This had me worried because I was thinking this is going to be big damage, and 2,300 is a significant chunk, but Kimahri's fire armlet coming in handy there, 1,200. But Tidus and Waka definitely taking big chunks here. So our damage output is a little bit low, and we are taking pretty big damage here. So I thought this could be potentially close. So let's keep going. 2,900 for a normal attack from Tidus, but we land another critical for another 4,000, thankfully. So already at this stage we get to the preparation for Ultima. There is no salvation for the damned. Rest in peace in eternal darkness. And then the Dispel comes. Now, as we've talked about before, with this particular challenge, you can't cast spells, so Dispel does absolutely nothing. Now, I'm going to stop it again, because I think you're going to notice something different, but I want to explain why you're going to see that here. Seymour goes into this sort of high power state. He delivers the Dispel, which does nothing to our party, because any statuses we do have, they activate automatically, so it's not going to dispel anything from our party. But the more interesting part of this is that in preparation for the upcoming Ultima, Seymour will go into this state, and when he is in this state, his defense will actually drop. So the defense stat will go down from 180 all the way down to 100. And that's why when Tidus and co come in to attack now, you're going to see very different damage numbers. So it's not that suddenly piercing has worked or he's been armor broken or something like that. He's kind of had I guess he's had like a mini armor break, where his defense has gone down quite significantly. So he's giving you a chance to do some big damage before he delivers his own massive spell. So take a look at the damage he's going to receive now after going into this sort of red state. There you go, quad 9. That's the difference it makes. 80 less defense, and suddenly the boys are doing basically about 3 times as much damage as they were previously. So the defense scaling is pretty insane. Now here comes the big Ultima. This is what I was scared of. No party member has more than 4,400 HP. Can we survive with our low magic defense? The answer is yes, just about. Just about. So if I didn't do some of the stat increases that I did in the Sea of Sorrow, and I had like 500 to 1,000 less HP, then this could have been a much bigger problem and we'd have had to figure it out a different way. But we were fortunate here. So Kimahri got taken out, but Waka and Tidus had enough HP to survive. And from here onwards, I was pretty sure I could get the job done. Now, once he goes back into this blue state, I'll pause one more time. You can see on screen that Waka's done 2,900 damage. So there's interesting fluctuations in the amount of damage you do in this battle. He started at 1,800, then he got quad 9 on a critical, and now he's gone down to 2,900 for this particular attack. The reason, again, after he drops from 180 to 100 in the red state, after Ultima happens and he returns to his kind of blue default state, his defense is now 150 instead of 180. So his baseline has gone down by 30 points, and that's why we are starting to do more significant damage again. So if he stayed at 180 throughout the entire battle, then again, things would have worked out differently and I might not have survived. But thankfully, because of the way his defense drops during the battle, we were really able to exploit that, because we still have relatively high strength stats. So again, at this stage, it felt to me like there was a pretty good chance I could finish him off before he took out the rest of the party. The elements change, but we still have a decent number of attacks here. So 4,300 from Tidus, Kimahri with a 3,000, and I was starting to think surely we should be able to get this done. Now, one more set of spells could be big trouble for us here if we don't finish him off. And thankfully, Tidus delivers a very clutch critical hit, and that was like, I think, the 3rd or the 4th critical hit of the battle. So we did have some good RNG here. And I kind of had a mind to retry this one just to see if it was a fluke, like were those critical hits the reason I managed to survive. So what I decided to do is actually try this fight one more time for you guys, because I did want to know how much of that was actually just luck, and if I didn't get those extra 2 or 3 criticals, would I have lost? So let's quickly take a look at that before moving on to the City of Dying Dreams. Okay, here we go. It's time for attempt number 2. This time we'll see if the RNG is different and if we die as a result. So I'm going to kind of sprint through here just to see if anything changes. Because I do feel like it was pretty close. We might have got a little bit lucky here. Also trying to remember if it's always this particular order. I think Kimari will always take the second hit, so positioning him in the middle might have been the best idea, but no, that was wrong. That was definitely wrong. Now this was already interesting because Waka took the 4th Fire Arga, so he's going to get wiped out by Ultima. So I do think I got a little bit lucky in my first attempt against Omnis, I have to say. And I think you're going to see that manifest here, because I'm probably going to die. Once Waka fails to survive Ultima, already the battle's going to look very different. So we'll see. Because he doesn't have like SOS Shell. If he had SOS Shell equipped, maybe again it would have been different. But this is what I mean. Sometimes RNG, especially in these kind of games, man, they can make all the difference. Which characters get selected for attacks and whether you have a critical or not, everything can change. So Kimari this time around survives. But there's no one there to revive Waka, so we're not going to have enough turns here to get this done. So I am going to die. So this is what I mean. I definitely got a little bit lucky last time. I'm pretty sure this isn't going to be enough. Yeah, here you go. Oh, he went to this phase again? Wow, okay. Well, that was a little bit lucky. I think we might have enough to get it done. Maybe? Yes, just about. Okay, fine. I really thought I was going to die that time, but you can see it was definitely closer, and I did get 1 or 2 critical hits. So maybe like if I do this fight 10 times, it's maybe like 50-50 or like 70%, because that wasn't exactly like brilliant RNG. But to be fair, Kimari did survive with 124 HP, so I don't know, like I would say let's call it 50-50. It wasn't like a really fluky and lucky run that I beat it, but it's also not, it's not a gimme, and there is a decent chance you could potentially fail. So that's fair enough, and I just wanted to give that one more run just to show you guys what could happen. But we are now officially ready to move on to the City of Dying Dreams and set up the final showdown with Jecht himself. With Seymour gone, we can move into the final area of Sin. Now, the difference here is that there are going to be some enemies here that we have not faced before. So this area is definitely the single most dangerous area that we have in the game so far. And well, that's how it should be, because it's literally the final stretch before fighting the final storyline boss of the game. So we need to take this seriously. I mean, you saw what the Behemoth King could do, and there's more than one enemy like Behemoth King that could potentially wipe your party out if you're not careful. So that's something I had to try my best to kind of prepare for, and there was a decent chance I could get a game over before making it to Brastar's Final Aeon. So it was time to make some preparations before the final stretch. I was pretty happy with the team, and I think for now I want to keep the SOS Protect on Tidus, but for Kimari we moved back towards something like Confuse Ward, and for Waka I kept the Auto Potion and Auto Phoenix. The weaponry was stuff that I'd already set up before, so I was happy to continue with the same weapons for now. So it wasn't like major preparation, but if there was something specific I encountered that caused me a problem, I could then potentially take them out. I did want to get as many of the chests as possible, so I did potentially just try to activate this thing. I thought, you know what, maybe it's worth doing. And of course I ran into Barbatos first time, one of the most difficult encounters. Now, having Piercing already is making much lighter work of him, which is very useful to us. So Piercing plus some kind of evading counter / counter attack makes Barbatos look a lot easier. Now, the mortar counter attack is annoying, but again, the stat level that I have right now, I think overall he just isn't powerful enough to cause me too much of a problem. Now, if I didn't have any piercing, then this battle could have gone very differently, but not only did he drop a return sphere, he also dropped an epic armor for Auron with HP plus 20 and 3 free slots. So I have definitely had some really good RNG with the armor drops in this game, and so that was another one to add to the list. So with that strong start, I was thinking if I wiped out Barbatos that easily, then there's a pretty good chance that most things should be fine here, because that was one of the ones I was fearing. But having piercing there, of course, made a big difference, and I was looking to kind of power my way through. So it was looking increasingly like I had a pretty strong chance of getting to the end here, because that was one of the most dangerous enemies. Next up, of course, was another one of the worst enemies I could have faced, and that was the Monolith, because it has Pharaoh's Curse, as you're seeing, which is very nasty. And it pretty much does it every time. So every time you attack it, it's going to come back with Pharaoh's Curse. And as you can see, we are not very well equipped to handle it. So already this was like, oh shit, this is not good. And then Breath came along and I was like, wait a minute. Before I even know what's going on, 2 of my characters have been petrified. Waka was lucky to get away with this, but he is going to be completely like messed up here because of poison and darkness combining. It's going to keep reapplying, and this turned into an absolutely horrible, horrible battle, and I got game overed by a Demonolith. So yeah, for those of you guys thinking this was going to be smooth sailing at this stage, I did say it, but it didn't take long before I had to sit my ass back down and rethink, because there are some really nasty enemies here. And I think the only annoying thing really was that I lost that really nice Tetra armor. I should have saved. I got too cocky here. I should have gone back and saved after that drop, but I did not, and therefore I lost the armor. So that was really annoying, but it was time to rethink here. So I did have a Stone Ward, and I was wondering if Stone Ward was going to be enough to handle it. I thought, let's just try it with Stone Ward for now. I didn't want to start using like stone proof stuff at the moment, because I wanted that for Brass's Fine Leon. So for now, I decided to try and go for something a bit more kind of intermediate that was going to have like petrification protection, potentially darkness protection, and potentially poison protection. And I just thought, let me just go straight back into it here. And then I faced this guy. Now, literally the game crashed here. This isn't me pausing the game. I did have like some random freezing issues now and then. But yeah, literally the first 3 encounters in the City of Dying Dreams was Barbatos, Demonolith, and then Great Malbro, which was an ambush, and it bad breathed me. Now, normally when you encounter it here, it's not the same as Omega Ruins. It's not by default an ambush plus bad breath. This was literally just bad luck. And so thankfully, because I was literally just restarting after a game over, it wasn't really a big deal, but already I was like, oh shit, I think this is going to be literally 2 game overs. So let's see what happens after this weird freezing / crash sorted itself out. It was weird, like this happened a few times during the run, but the game would keep running, like the music and stuff would keep running, but for sometimes like 30 to 60 seconds the game would just stop and then resume itself. So it was a bit weird, but it will come back. So literally after about a minute and a half, I was patient here because I really wanted to see the results. This happened, all 3 of the guys got confused, and when that happens it's already game over. So horrible, horrible area, the City of Dying Dreams. So it definitely killed my dreams of getting to Brass's Fine Leon for another attempt. And so I had to kind of go back to the drawing board one more time. Now, the statuses that you have to cover, they are numerous. And at this end game kind of stage, they're all like 100% affliction. So having just like a ward doesn't protect you that well. So I was getting a little bit worried about potentially having a problem trying to get to Brass's Fine Leon after all of this kind of slogging that I did through the Sea of Sorrow and beating Seymour Omnis. So let's see what happened on attempt 3 in trying to get to Brass's Fine Leon. So here we go, it is time for take 3. I had petrification to deal with, I had poison to deal with, I had confusion to deal with as well. Those were the 3, and I had darkness to deal with. So there was just no way, I didn't have like the inventory to cover all of those things. So honestly, I kind of had to rely on a little bit more luck to try and get me through. For attempt 3, there were other things that I could do, but I was still kind of experimenting and seeing if I could get away with using the least amount of resources possible. So for Tidus, I ended up going for, again, Dark Ward, Stone Ward, and Poison Ward on his armor. For Kimari, I had a Confuse Ward, and I decided to add Stone Ward to that to try and help him out a little bit. Again, I could get Stone Proof, but for now I didn't want to backtrack. I wanted to see if I could just make it through with Stone Ward alone. So I did have one person with Confusion Protection. For Waka, I decided to be a bit stubborn and just see if I could get by without having any status protection for him, because I felt like the Auto Phoenix was kind of too powerful to give up at this stage. And because his attacking is still more powerful than Yuna, I decided to stick with it, because there are a lot of battles where you're going to completely just kind of sail through. So Barbatos is fine, you've already seen Adamantoise is fine. I think 1 in every 2 or 3 encounters you could run into something that could cause you a big problem. So I felt like let me just give it a run with this and see how far we can get. The path to get to the end of the City of Dying Dreams is not that long, so I figured like how many encounters could we even have by the end of it. But before long it was round 2. Now this time I had more favourable luck because it wasn't an ambush, and this is how the battle goes against this guy if you manage to get a normal encounter without an ambush. So you get 4 attacks in, and then there's a 1 in 3 chance that it does a bad breath. So the odds of this guy giving you a game over is going to be a maximum of 1 in 3 unless you get ambushed. So this was a much more regular kind of encounter, and this is more what I was counting on. I wouldn't say this is like good RNG, what you just saw. That was much more kind of normal RNG. Now, unfortunately, the Great Malboro doesn't drop proofs, which is really annoying. I think at this stage it should be dropping some proofs, but unfortunately not. So we kind of have to just keep rolling. The Demonolith does drop stone proof, so that is something we could look into later on, but unfortunately it's not something we can farm from the Great Malboro. But I still feel like the best iteration of the Malboro should be dropping, like, well, the one that you can encounter as a random encounter. I feel like it should be dropping you some proofs. Now, of course, at this stage it felt very important to have initiative, so I decided to potentially drop my counterattack with Kimahri to give myself initiative plus first strike. It seems pretty important to me. You saw what the Great Malboro did to me when it ambushed, so having initiative is definitely, I think, a smart move here. And so that's what I gave Kimahri at the expense of a little bit of attacking. Okay, 4 on 1, not that useful, unfortunately. Now these guys are any encounter that we already faced in the Sea of Sorrow and that I know to be easy. I pretty much just sped up and worked my way through. We've got a nice regen armlet though for Kimahri. Kimahri, I'm going to kind of stop using him soon because obviously for Brassus Fine Leon you get a preset party, so this was kind of his last hurrah in the game. But it had been good to generally just have him be a part of this team pretty much all the way through. So props to Kimahri because he so often gets overlooked. But I actually managed to make good use of him in this run, which was pretty nice. So, Malboro encounter number 2. Again, we have initiative at this stage, so we can't be ambushed. And that means that the maximum chance of any Great Malboro encounter giving me a game over is 1 in 3. It's not too bad. Now, this was one of those 1 in 3s. We did get the bad breath. Let's see if we can survive this time. I had much more favourable RNG here because only one person got confused. But let's see if we can survive. Because of all of the other statuses, it's still super nasty. So it was increasingly looking like you can't really get away with it just trying to have, like, you know, poison ward, confused ward, some stone ward. At this late stage, the enemies are just so powerful, and their statuses that hit the entire party with high accuracy. And so, as you can see, it's just causing me huge problems here, and I can't really find a way out. Like, once you have the statuses and you're in auto battle, there's obviously nothing you can do here to fix it. So, very, very dangerous area. Even with like initiative and the general strength of the characters that I have. So let's see if the boys find a way to kind of save themselves here. It's looking increasingly unlikely. Wakka's high potion still working is actually pretty nice. Keeps him in the game for a little bit longer here, but it's looking increasingly less and less likely that they're going to survive. But Auto Phoenix, this is why I kept Wakka's Auto Phoenix instead of status protection here. And so now there's an outside chance that we actually make our way out of this, because Kimahri is hitting for quad 9s. So as long as Kimahri stays alive here and Wakka continues to revive, then we got this. Earlier, if you were thinking, yeah, but like you're seeing all the statuses, why would you? That was a counterattack shit. And you're thinking like, isn't it too big a risk to not give Wakka any protection? It is a risk, but this is the reward. Like this particular battle, if Wakka didn't have his Auto Phoenix, then it would have been another game over. So that's what I mean. It's always like a risk balance, and this time it paid off. So I'm sure many of you thought that that was going to be a game over, but Wakka's Auto Phoenix was clutch and kept me in the game. So I was very close there, but I managed to save myself. Now Auron's still getting some good stuff here at this stage, which is pretty cool. He's already got poison proof and stone proof. Now he's got dark proof and death proof. So at this stage, honestly, you could invest in Auron and kind of swap him in for Kimahri, because he's going to need to be there for Brassus Fine Leon anyway. So it's something that you could definitely look into doing. So for now, I'm still cashing in every sphere level I get. The closer I get to Brassus Fine Leon, at this stage, like I say, the limiters are off in that sense, and I am just kind of working my way through and trying to get as strong as I can for the finale. Now, I say that, but for Tidus, I did leave some sphere levels in reserve. I kind of forgot about that, but as you can see, at this stage, I'm kind of keeping him balanced with everybody else. Like, Waka and Kimahri, I'm taking them as far as the sphere grid will allow them to go, but because Tidus has been in the party, obviously, for every single battle of the game, pretty much, he has more sphere levels anyway. So, for a while, I kind of held on, and I kept him at similar levels to the other two. But because I knew that he was going to be in the Brass Fine Leon battle, and Waka and Kimahri weren't going to, this was the stage where I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm not going to kind of keep him balanced with the other two anymore, because Tidus's race is not yet run, but the other two still have a little bit of time to go. So Tidus got a little bit more of a boost here, and I started to sort of distance him from the other two, because I wanted to make sure he was ready for Brass Fine Leon. So let's continue on and see what else we encounter. We're already getting close to making it out of here at this stage. These guys, again, no problem. You can see the turbo coming on whenever I face something that I know I'm going to be able to beat pretty easily. And then I drop back down to normal to give myself time to explain things if it is a more difficult battle again. I always forget what's in these chests. I have like a general idea, but it's always such a long time between playthroughs. It's not the kind of thing that obviously kind of stays in my mind. But I still get them anyway, just in case it is something really good. So even Behemoth King at this stage, it should be pretty much a breeze. I won't speed it up here, just to see how it plays out in case I do get a game over. But I'd have to be very unlucky here for the entire party to be killed. So this is pretty much perfect outcome. And I think both Waka and Tidus are pretty much 100% guaranteed to survive the meteor at the end. So let's have a look here. And after this battle, I was pretty much convinced that this guy was almost impossible for him to give me a game over. So we survived pretty comfortably. So that's all good. I do kind of wish that you didn't waste the high potions after the enemy's already dead. Like, the order of events is kind of funny, but yeah, Waka just wants to flex and make sure everyone's alive for the finale. So Behemoth King at this stage became a formality as well. It was pretty much just Malboro and the Demonolith that were the biggest problems. This was the platform down, not the platform up, but I forgot at the time. Silly me. Yeah, a lot of great Malboro encounters. The game was really pushing me to the limit here. So last time I got the bad luck. It was the 1 in 3 chance of a bad breath. Let's see what happens this time. I got more attacks in, but I was unlucky. So the initial counter value, I think, was favorable for me to get some more attacks in. But this time I got worse RNG than the last time with what bad breath did to me. So it's looking increasingly less and less likely that I survive now. Because Waka is confused, he's not going to use his Auto Phoenix, so it's looking pretty bad here. This attack is mean because it looks like a very physical attack, but the game treats it as like magic, and therefore it won't knock you out of confusion, even though it looks like they've been physically hit by something like that. It still maintains their confusion status, so it's particularly horrible. So I made it out by the skin of my teeth last time because Waka wasn't confused. But now that he is, it's looking like we don't really have any way to survive this time, unfortunately. So I was doing well, but once again, the City of Dying Dreams shattered my dreams, and I wasn't able to make it to Brass Fine Leon. So I was getting really close, but like not quite able to go the distance here. So once again, another game over. So it's been Demonolith giving me a game over with the double breath attack that it did. And then we've had bad breath. I've literally been hit. The odds of me having 2 bad breaths in a row as the first attack from a Great Malboro is like 1 in 9. So that was genuinely unlucky here. So let's have a look one final time to see what I can do to be able to get through to Brass Fine Leon. Now, in general, one of the things that I have been talking about throughout the playthrough is that I have had a lot of good RNG with armor drops. But one thing where I haven't had particularly great RNG is confusion protection. So Tidus at this point still doesn't have any confusion protection throughout the entire game. And as you've seen, confusion at this stage is still one of the most annoying statuses and one of the ones most likely to give you a game over. So Confuse Proof is kind of out of the question for now anyway. And well, even the confusion protection we do have is Confuse Ward, and the Great Malboro has 100% affliction rate for confusion. So there's a 50% chance that any given character will be confused if bad breath happens. So in that sense, it's not looking too good. I mean, you can of course just kind of brute force it and keep relying on RNG, or you can try to increase your chances despite what you have. Now, this time around I decided to start using Auto Med, and so Kimari now has poison protection, petrification protection, well, partial protection, and also Auto Med. So my hope was that provided that all three of the guys don't get confused at the same time, then Auto Med should be enough to get me out of trouble and to get the final few hits that I need in order to win the battle. Because you've seen that I do anywhere from like 4 to 5 hits, then the bad breath comes, so I only really need like 2 more hits to win the battle. So that's why I thought if I can even just do that, then the Auto Med should be enough to get me out of trouble. So the general plan was to have Tidus and Kimari with Poison Ward, Stone Ward, and Auto Med, and then just leave Waka with his Auto Phoenix and his Auto Potion. I know he still has a free slot, but I just refuse to kind of commit something to that I'll later regret. So I wanted to keep that slot open for as long as possible, unless I felt like I absolutely 100% needed it in order to progress. So let's have another look at this run through the City of Dying Dreams. At this stage I was like, please let me encounter a Great Malboro as soon as possible, and the gods oblige. So once again, Great Malboro encounter. Now I'm like, I got 2 bad breaths in a row, now it's probably going to stop using bad breath for a while. I can't really test the new setup. So again, 2/3 of the time roughly this is what should happen anyway, and so it's a formality. But in that last attempt, literally getting 2 bad breaths in a row was annoying. Now I'd forgotten to do my little initiative weapon here, so I made sure I set that back up again to avoid any ambushes. And with that I was ready to go. So this time I felt like with the Auto Med in effect as well, there should be a pretty strong chance of me being able to make it through. The biggest risk I think at this stage was Demonolith, which happened to appear next. So you can see that like the encounter RNG has been horrific for City of Dying Dreams. It's been really weird in that sense. Like 80% of the encounters here have been the worst ones basically, when it should really be like 20-30%. So let's see how we fare this time around, because breath of course is again very dangerous. But we need a bit of luck with that, and so thankfully, because once again we have the agility and we also have initiative, it's not going to ambush us, and we have the amount of turns needed to be able to win. So let's keep rolling. Demonolith still remains a big threat, but you see literally the first 3 encounters, Great Malboro, Demonolith, Great Malboro. It's just been really funky RNG here for the random encounters, and that's why it's taken a while to even get through this section. Like, you can literally make this run without encountering a single Great Malboro. Like, if you did it 10 times, I'd say maybe once or twice you wouldn't encounter any of them. And here it's like 2 out of 3 encounters. It's like ridiculous. So let's keep going. See what else we're going to face this time around. I mean, surviving 2 Great Malboros and a Demonolith with absolutely no trouble is good, but I haven't faced them with like bad RNG yet. So if that happens, then it will be the true kind of acid test to see if the Auto Med is enough to really like firmly put the odds in my favor of being able to get through. Like, still against the Great Malboro, if you get 3 confusions, it's going to be pretty much game over anyway. But with the protection that we have, the odds of that happening is still pretty low. It would be like a 1 in 3 chance that it even uses that, and then the odds of it confusing everybody, like when you combine all of those factors together, there is a pretty low chance that I should get a game over with this particular setup. And then literally the first 5 encounters have been 2 Great Malboros, 2 Demonoliths, and an Adamantoise. Absolutely ridiculous. So once again, every time we face one of these guys, it's potential danger. But you can see that Auto Med basically makes this battle almost unlosable for me, because I'm not going to get ambushed, and I can deal with the Pharaoh's Curse, so I can continue to land enough hits to be able to beat it. So basically Auto Med takes care of the Monolith and the Pharaoh's Curse, and you can see there 2 battles, and it didn't really have much of a chance. So it was starting to look a lot more likely that we'd be okay, and then we got another epic drop. There it is! No encounters dropped by the Monolith. Finally, I had a way to avoid encounters, and basically at this point, I was literally Brass's Fine Leon ready. So this was an absolutely massive drop. As you've seen, terrible RNG with the enemy types that have been appearing, but incredibly good RNG with the armors that have been dropped. So I'd been looking for that for quite some time, and the fact that the Demonolith dropped it here was really, really fortunate. Now, me being me, I was like, you know what, I don't want to put the Peaceful Targe on, let's just see if this setup can get me through. And to be honest, maybe against Braskus Fine Leon, I would need the experience points, because I might potentially need another 10, 20, 30, 50 sphere levels in order to beat him. So I wanted to keep gaining the experience, and I wanted to test my setup a bit further. And you can see Demonolith, again, this is the third Demonolith. I think 6 out of 7 encounters now have either been a Demonolith or a Great Malboro. But thankfully not enough to stop me this time around. I keep checking what is dropping because Demonolith drops proofs, as you can see, and it also drops strikes. So you can get Stone Strike and you can get Stone Proof. Now, I also knew that I potentially needed Stone Proof against Braskus Fine Leon as well, so it might even be the case I could potentially need to farm Demonolith a bit in order to hopefully get a Stone Proof drop that I could use against Braskus Fine Leon. So lots of important stuff going on here. It was a pretty intense final kind of section here with a lot going on. A lot of game overs, a lot of adjustments, a lot of potentially important things being dropped, and just the final kind of countdown before the big guy himself. And guess what we encounter next? You have 2 guesses, and I guarantee you, you'll be correct. So make your guesses now. There it is, Great Malboro. 3 Great Malboros, 3 Demonoliths, and 1 Adamantoise so far in this thing. And we got the bad RNG, bad breath. So this was the big test. All 3 of them got confused, and at this stage I was really pissed because this basically meant that I would lose the Peaceful Shield, the Peaceful Targe, which is not the easiest drop to find. So this was super annoying. And again, I got pissed off on myself. I was like, why did you not just equip it? You could have just equipped the Peaceful Targe and not had to deal with this shit. And yeah, I was too stubborn here. I shouldn't have done this, and I got punished badly. But seriously, look at the RNG that I had for that entire run. Take the Peaceful Targe out of the equation. Seriously, I literally encountered the worst possible encounters 6 out of 7 times. And on the 3rd Malboro encounter, it did do the bad breath. So that really annoyed me. On this next attempt, I pretty much did the same thing as I did last time, except this time I gave the auto med on a Confuse ward for Kimari instead of the Stone ward and the Poison ward. For Tidus, I couldn't do the same because he doesn't have a Confuse ward still at this stage. But again, the auto meds were working very well for me against a Monolith. And so it's going to be the same setup, except having a little bit more confusion protection overall, and also hoping that we didn't get the atrocious RNG that we've been getting, with Great Malboro appearing literally like 50% of the time when I had encounters. So I was really annoyed that I lost that Peaceful Targe, but I thought at the end of the day, I definitely know I can make it to Braskus Fine Leon here. I just need things to go my way a little bit, and to potentially not be as stubborn next time. If I do get something like a Peaceful Targe, then just equip it and make use of it, and just make sure you get to the finish so that we can have a go against the final boss and see how we do. So this was indeed the final run to Braskus Fine Leon. So let's take a final look here. If you remember, the first time I came through, I gave Tidus a bit more of the stats. This time, it didn't seem like it was that necessary, and I kind of forgot. I was more focused on just making my way through. So Tidus' stats are actually lower than they were in my first run here. But I thought, let me just get to the end. I know I have the stats to make it to the finish here. Then I'll think about what I want to upgrade and how much. Encounter number 2, Wraith. This guy has that sort of armored status, but piercing makes pretty light work of him, so not a big deal. And he's just way too slow to have any kind of chance of doing anything. So this one is like a guaranteed win, basically. And it's just nice to see some different enemies for a change. So much Great Malboro and Demonolith, it's been absolutely ridiculous. This time around it was more of the Behemoth King show. But as you've seen, he's completely just, he's useless at this stage now. Not a problem anymore. So this time, on encounter number 4, we got a Great Malboro, but this time we have a preemptive strike. So with a preemptive, this is what happens. We make absolutely mincemeat of it. We have enough agility to take it out before it even gets a turn. So that's much more like it. If we are going to encounter Great Malboros, that's the way we want to do it. And 1 out of 4 is definitely not bad at all. I will take that every day of the week. But 2 out of 5, not so great. So this time we will have to face an attack from the Malboro. Let's see what happens. Okay, much better. And now we can finish it off with ease. So you're seeing there's kind of no in between. Either it's a very easy finish within 10 seconds, or it's a game over. There's only been one encounter so far where it's gone down to the wire and we've managed to save things. So usually it's pretty binary whether you beat it very quickly or not. Okay, another good encounter here. So this time around my encounter RNG was way better. It's been 2 out of 6 encounters where it was something actually dangerous this time around, as opposed to 6 out of 7 from last time. Next up, Behemoth King once again. Like I said, it was the Behemoth King show this time around, which was perfectly fine by me. So only 2 out of 7 encounters were dangerous this time. Adamantoise, fine, 2 out of 8. Barbatos, not really a threat, but you've only seen this guy once so far, so I'll include this as well. But way better enemy RNG here. You haven't seen a Demonolith for 8 encounters, for example, this time around. That's much more kind of par for the course, I think. But you can see, I mean, he's tough and he has a lot of HP, but not really enough to cause us any problems. Barbatos again. So still no sign of the Demonolith. It's been 10 encounters now, and is nowhere to be seen. So this is much better. Then we had some more encounters like the Wraith, and we were already starting to get very close now after 11 encounters. And the 12th was the final encounter that we faced before we could get to the save sphere, and it was the Geminis. So this was much better RNG, and you can see I pretty much breezed through and made it through very easily. So the times I failed is a mix of not being well set up, but I think the bigger reason was just having some pretty bad RNG. But this time around we're in a better position. So a quick look at what we were dropped here, just in case it was 4 slots potentially. And that's not too bad. I mean, it could be useful for something. But thankfully, we made it to the final save sphere. And now I can finally say that I have officially made it to Brass's Final Aeon in the Final Fantasy X Auto Battle Only Challenge. Now, since I had a save, obviously I was just looking for more. I was just kind of wandering around, seeing if there was anything I missed, anything that might be worth getting. But in general, I'm not going to show too much more here from this. You've generally seen the idea here. And the only thing that can basically take me down at this stage is if I get unlucky against the Great Malboro and the Bad Breath gives us sufficiently problematic status effects. So what I will do is I will show you the first encounter against Brass's Final Aeon. I don't want to kind of blue ball people too much here because I spent a lot more time trying to get to Brass's Final Aeon than I thought I would. I was generally thinking that it would take maybe like 2 attempts, 3 absolute tops to make it. But I did struggle a little bit here, so most of the video was going to be actually trying to get to Brass's Final Aeon himself. So I won't leave you guys hanging. I will show you guys the first encounter and how we go from there. Now, of course, that's kind of a spoiler alert here. It means I didn't defeat him first time, but I don't think anyone's surprised by that. So let's see the kind of first attempt / setup, how it all went, how it ended, and then I will conclude, and the next episode will hopefully be my attempts against Brass's Final Aeon. So let's start talking about Brass's Final Aeon as you watch me take on some more encounters, and it will become more apparent why I'm continuing to do this as well. Brass's Final Aeon is of course very powerful, 2-part boss. The first phase has 60,000 HP and the second phase has 120,000 HP. So 180k in total to take out, plus you have the U pagodas on either side that are going to be healing him pretty regularly and filling his overdrive gauge very quickly. Now, things I knew that were going to be a problem were going to be that he is quick, he's going to be using his overdrives a lot because I won't be able to attack the U pagodas. With this particular challenge, either we have auto battle and we can attack the body, or we don't have auto battle and due to the restrictions I can only just target his body and do nothing else. So this means that the U pagodas are going to keep healing him and filling up his overdrive gauge very fast. Now, in the first phase, his overdrive isn't too bad, but in the second phase, he has a very powerful overdrive that could potentially wipe everybody out. So that was a big issue. Another big issue is potentially agility and delay. My characters are pretty highly leveled and they are quick, but when you have delay attacks, it can really punish them quite heavily. And Braskel's Fine Leon has multiple attacks that can cause you some kind of delay. So against most random encounters, I'm getting anywhere from like 4 to 6 hits before they do. But against Braskel's Fine Leon, with all of the potential delays that we can encounter as well, I don't think it was going to be a situation where we can just land like 4 to 6 hits every time and be able to kind of blitz him out like that. So the delay was also a potential problem. And the final immediate problem that I was thinking about before even the first encounter was, of course, Ject Beam. Ject Beam is one which doesn't do a lot of damage, but it has a 100% chance of petrification. If anyone gets petrified by Ject Beam, then it's effectively game over unless it happens right at the end. So basically, trying to take on Braskel's Fine Leon without any kind of petrification protection is really silly, and it's not a good idea. And in this challenge, of course, once you get petrified, even if you don't shatter, there's no way to heal it. So auto med won't work, and of course it's attack only or auto battle, and therefore you cannot heal either. So those are the problems facing me, aside from literally like, you know, how hard he hits or how much HP he has. And it was already looking like it could be a very difficult battle with the current setup that I had. So what I did was to hang around a bit more in the City of Dying Dreams, because as I mentioned already, the Demonolith actually drops you proof armors. And that means that if I get lucky, I could potentially get some stone-proof armors for the party. Now, it is possible to do some monster capturing and to get petrified grenades so that you can customize them, but for now I was thinking I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone and pick up some more sphere levels. As you're seeing, they are starting to climb, and then also hoping that maybe I get that no encounters equipment that I got last time before I died, and then also hoping that I get some stone-proof as well. So that was the general thing. I mean, I felt a lot more safe, and I was close to a save sphere, so I could just do a few battles and just remember to regularly save so that I didn't have any progress lost. So I did hang out in the City of Dying Dreams for a while longer and tried to see if I could farm for some experience and equipment. Another reason I did this was because of this particular sort of glyph wall thing where you have to defeat a certain amount of fiends to get through. And well, indirectly as a result, what I was doing, I could beat enough fiends to get through to this chest. So that was another reason I did it, and I'll quickly show you guys what's in that chest. Inside is a level 4 key sphere. It's not exactly the most important thing in the world, but it is something I got along the way while I was farming here. Okay, so I did spend a decent amount of time here. I think it was maybe like 15-20 minutes on ×2 speed, and it didn't really like help that much. I did obviously get some more levels and stuff, but I didn't end up getting any kind of stone proof or anything for anybody, and also didn't pick up a no encounters. So after a while I thought, you know what, I'm getting a little bit bored, let me just try to take on Braskel's Fine Leon and get that first sort of feeler out there to see how we stack up against the final boss. I was already pretty sure that you have to face Braskel's Fine Leon with Tidus, Yuna, and Auron in this particular challenge, because of course we can't swap characters, but it's something I wanted to confirm, and just in case I was wrong and you could swap characters, I thought let me just level up my strongest trio anyway, and well then if it turns out that I remember wrong and you can start against Braskel's Fine Leon with any lineup that you want, then it might be useful. So here's a quick glance at the stats that I have before going into my first attempt against Braskel's Fine Leon. Kimahri, 5800 HP, 78 strength, 44 defense, 55 agility, and only 11 magic defense, and pretty much base luck. So Kimahri is doing well, but like not as good as Tidus and Wakka. Wakka has notably more HP at 6700, strength 75, defense 46, but his agility is a lot lower than Kimahri's because of the portions of the grid that he's filled out so far. And finally, of course, Tidus is far and away the strongest of the bunch because he's picked up the most sphere levels out of everybody. He has 6900 HP, he has 84 strength, 45 defense, and 71 agility. And since I've been feeding him the luck spheres, he has 30 luck as well. So I decided to just go in with Tidus, Kimahri, and Wakka and see what was going to happen in this particular battle. And so even though Wakka and Tidus still have sphere levels, at this stage my main priority was to even test what the front line looks like. So I decided to just abandon kind of working on the characters. I was obviously getting impatient at this stage. I mean, it took me a few times to get through. I think it took like 5 attempts to get through the final section, so I was really itching to just get in there and just start that first attempt off. What I'll do here is I will skip the crystal minigame before Braskel's Fine Leon, because the enemies that you encounter there, they're not too much of a problem. and provided that you're kind of slow and methodical, you can get away with pretty much not encountering anything. So it's pretty slow, and the stuff that you get here is not going to be useful to me for the rest of the run. So I am going to skip this bit, and we're going to head straight towards the battle and see how it goes. Jekt is waiting, and it's now the final chance for you to go in and set up before the battle starts. So let's take a final look here and see what we can do. No stoneproof for Tidus, which is already not a good idea. So this attempt is not going to go well. I mean, spoiler alert here. But it is something that you just want to see with your own eyes before you start to make any kind of adjustment. So I tried to make some preparations anyway, but it was pretty unlikely that I was going to be able to make any kind of reasonable headway here. This was a situation where I thought this is after the last save anyway, so I did give Waka the Stone Ward in case it helps him survive an extra turn or two. But Stone Ward in general is just not advisable against this guy. So let's go in and see what happens here. It's finally time. Months ago I started this challenge, wondering how far I could get. Could I even get beyond one session? Turns out I could, and here we are all this time later against the final boss of the game. Okay, so the epic music begins, and straight away you see Tidus, Auron and Yuna rushing towards Brass's Fine Leon. So it was already very clear that you cannot choose your front line in this one. Auto battle is disabled here, so you will have to manually just target Brass's Fine Leon and use attack. You don't have any other choice here. So let's just go for it. You can see Auron has a long way to go, and of course so does Yuna. So this was not looking good. All of the investment I'd made into Waka and Kimahri is of course useless at this point. So it was kind of a, for two of my characters at least, it was not quite a back to square one, it was like back to square 2 or 3 or something. So look at these power waves just giving him 3000 healing here. And look at that overdrive gauge just going absolutely crazy. Jekt Beam, there you go, there's that petrification. Stoneproof, absolutely essential against this guy. If you're going to be in the battle for any length of time, it's definitely needed. Unless you want to rely on like a supreme level of RNG, which is just not going to work here. So here's the overdrive of the first form. Can Tidus survive it is a big question. And the answer is yes. So it seems like Tidus is pretty ready to kind of handle business in terms of the stats here. So even though Yuna and Auron leave something to be desired here, Tidus was looking ready for the challenge. So this meant already that it was becoming clear what I had to do. I had to take some time away to get Auron, poor Auron by the way, rip. We had to get basically Auron and Yuna up to speed and basically at the same kind of stats as Tidus to be able to potentially take down Brass's final Aeon. But you can see already that second overdrive is there, and remember in the first form this is like the easy overdrive, the baby one, and against Yuna with her current stats she's getting taken out. So she can survive it at full health, but in general she's just not she is not well equipped for this battle either. So we have a lot of work to do, we have a lot of customization to do, we have a lot of like stat leveling to do. It's just going to be a lot of work here. But Tidus gives me hope. You can see that even by himself, basically by himself, he's managed to get his dad down to his second form. Now, annoyingly, of course, you can't use the talk command, so you can't avoid any of the overdrives here. But as soon as he switches to the second form, there comes that big sword swipe, and it's almost 3000 damage plus delay to the entire party. So there it is, my friends. The first attempt against Brass's final Aeon. So it went as expected for me, but for people that have been following along with the challenge and that weren't sure what was going to happen, there you go, I got completely slaughtered. And the biggest reason for that was, of course, because the game forces you to do the battle with Auron and Yuna, and if they weren't your characters of choice for most of the game, which they weren't for me, then now is the time where you're going to become unstuck, and you will be forced to level those guys up and have them be ready for the battle. So I will be wrapping up this episode here. Brass's Final Aeon has been reached, and the end is in sight, but there is work to be done before I can truly challenge Brass's Final Aeon, because that second form has double the HP, and it has an overdrive that is a lot more powerful than Triumphant Grasp, and you saw the sword swipe there, that can get used as a regular move against the party as well. So I hope you guys are excited for the next episode. I'm looking forward to sharing how it went with you guys as well. Thank you as always to everybody that's been watching along with the series, that's been liking, that's been commenting, that's been telling me how much they're enjoying it. People that I've run into on the stream that we've been talking to about the challenge. It's just been a really great piece of content that's had brilliant feedback, and I've really loved doing it, playing it, editing it, uploading it. The responses I've got to it, both in terms of obviously the viewership, the new patrons that have been joining, and the wonderful feedback. It really has ticked all the boxes, and I've had an absolute space whale of a time. So thank you all for watching once again, guys. I will be back in the next episode with Brass's Final Aeon. There is a lot of work to be done, but it does seem like we can beat the final boss and complete the game in this auto battle / attack only challenge. I'll see you soon, guys. Take care.